Right. Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. So my name is Kafuko Zachariah, and I wish to welcome you to this session titled Charity Entrepreneurship, Start Your Own High Impact Nonprofit. So just a little bit about this session. As maybe some of you already are aware, AIM has launched over 50 nonprofits. Many are independently estimated to be 10, 20, and even 25 times as cost effective as GiveWell's top charities. So through this session, we hope to explore their program, the funding, and perhaps your fit and why launching a charity could be your most impactful career path. This talk is basically for everyone, whether you're a student or professionals or just curious to learn the key ingredients of successful impactful projects and successful project founders. So I think this is what we are all looking forward to hearing and learning more on. And definitely this session is going to be presented by Steve Thompson. And just a bit about Steve. So Steve Thompson studied philosophy and entrepreneurship, and he has worked for 10 years in the corporate sector as a senior leadership development consultant. And in addition to this, he also launched his own school for entrepreneurs. He co-founded Training for Good, which is an EA, meta charity. And now Steve works at AIM running the charity incubation program. So I wish to welcome Steve to this very, very important session. But before we get started with Steve and welcome him officially, just maybe a few housekeeping pointers. So the first one is that at any point in during the session, you have the ability to put your questions through Swapcard. Just go to the session, and when you tap on the question section, you can type in your questions there, and we'll be able to see them, and we should be able to ask them as we get to the Q&A part of the session. And just the other pointer is that we are going to have office hours immediately following this session in Gather Round for continued discussion or conversation, especially for those that may have interesting follow-up or just want to learn more or hang out with Steve and hopefully me. So I think at this point, please join me in welcoming Steve Thompson to the platform. Steve?
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. Delighted to be here. I'll be talking about becoming a charity entrepreneur and our incubation program. So should we get going? Yep. Great.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. We'll do Q&A at the end, as Zach said. So feel free to put questions in the chat, and we'll have plenty of time to answer them after the short talk. I think the talk will be maybe half an hour, maybe 35 minutes, something like that. So yeah, looking forward to this. So let's begin. Well, maybe just one piece of context first, because it might get confusing if I don't mention it at the start. We recently rebranded to Ambitious Impact. We were formerly called Charity Entrepreneurship, and the program that I run is called Charity Entrepreneurship. So it sits within the AIM bubble, as it were. So if that gets confusing at any point, just ask. But at Charity Entrepreneurship, we help people perhaps just like you, start field-leading charities. Charities in the top 1% in terms of evidence base and cost effectiveness. And to do this, we're on the hunt for really analytical and caring people. How it works is each year, our research team pores over the evidence to find the most promising new charity ideas that, if they were to exist, would be like 10 times or more as effective as the current best worldwide, better than GiveWell or ACE's top recommendations. We then recruit talented people from all over the world. We give them 2 months of intensive training and the funding so that they can take one of these rare ideas and make it a reality. And it works. As was mentioned previously, we've been going for about 7 years and we've launched over 50 new organizations. And I'm Steve, as has been introduced to you. About 5 years ago, I was working in the corporate sector as a leadership consultant. I would go around and talk to very important people. And then I just started to kind of wonder, like, why are these the people that I'm helping? Like, why am I helping these companies make a little bit more money? What's the point? Surely there are people who need help way more than these people. So I quit my job. I applied to the charity entrepreneurship incubation program. And to my great surprise, I got on. And through it, I launched a charity, and that's going fine. And I went to work for AIM, or Charity Entrepreneurship. So I've been through the program. I've done the whole thing, as it were. So I guess the reason I'm here talking to you today is because I can speak to what it's like pivoting your career for purpose and meaning. I can speak to what it's like applying to the program. I can speak to what it's like going through the program. And I can speak to what it's like founding a charity. And plus given that I now run the program itself, I can talk to you a lot about who we're looking for and what to kind of expect on the program. And the purpose of this talk, I think at a meta level or at a very high level, is to really ask yourself, could you, with the right support, become a charity founder, right? Is that something that you want to do in your life? As I mentioned, I worked previously as a leadership consultant and I ran a school for entrepreneurs. So I think the thread that runs through my career is that I've always been just super interested in what it is that makes people step up to the plate and say, you know what, I'm going to lead. I'm going to start this. I'm going to make this happen in the world. And there's just a remarkable difference between the people, the very, very few people who say, okay, nobody else is coming along, nobody else is going to do it. And then they kind of almost reluctantly do it themselves because it's just not going to happen otherwise. There's a big difference between those people and kind of everybody else. And I'm really fascinated by that difference. Like, what is it that causes people to step up to the plate? Um, so yeah, I mean, I guess in one sense, this talk is about you asking yourself, is that something you want to do? Would you like to step up to the plate and maybe launch one of these exceptionally impactful projects, or at least potentially exceptionally impactful projects? And I also just want to give you a good sense of how the program works and what it's like on the program. So the talk has a few parts. Sorry, I'll just go back. I forgot to mention this. This is our team on the left. There's about 20 of us now. We run a series of different programs, and we've launched 50 million or 50 orgs and raised and helped that many humans and that many animals. So I'll come back to all that in a while. So yeah, this talk has 4 parts. Sorry, there's a delay on my slides. Apologies. Yeah, so why this could be the most impactful and rewarding thing you could do with your career, then how you can do it, how our 2-month program works, who we're looking for, and then we'll touch on some common concerns and some misconceptions that might hold you back. And then there'll be plenty of time for Q&A at the end. And I'm also going to sprinkle in a bunch of examples along the way. But before I do, just one quick disclaimer is, of all of the people who could give this talk in the world, I'm probably the most biased. Right? Think about it. I went through the program. I had a really good experience. I launched a charity. It's going really well. And now I run the program. So clearly you should take everything that I'm saying here with a bit of a pinch of salt, because I've drunk the Kool-Aid, to say the least. So let's start by looking at why being a founder is worth considering, and why do we think that charity entrepreneurship is a valuable thing to do, or one of the most valuable things you can do. So the first part of our answer, not surprisingly, it's scale. The scale of the problems in the world are massive, and we could spend easily an hour today just listing the categories. So we need way, way, way more organizations specializing, focusing, and picking off these problems one by one. In fact, any one of the ideas that we launch a charity for could easily have 10, 20, even more organizations just going after that problem, because that problem exists in so many jurisdictions around the world. So there's just an awful lot of suffering. There's an awful lot of opportunity. So the scale is massive. Second, there are just far more incredible solutions to terrible problems than there are founders to pick up these solutions and put them into action. It's really quite common to speak to an academic and they're just tearing their hair out, wishing that someone would implement the amazing solution that they've designed and proven really works. But they're not, by their nature, implementers. They're not entrepreneurs, they're academics. So the solutions exist. We have high confidence in many of them, but we need to roll them out. And then the third major reason is, as we'll see in a moment, very few career paths are, in our belief, a fraction as impactful as being a founder. So what do I mean by impactful? Like we could unpack that a little bit. So let's take an example. This is Rob Mather. Rob founded the Against Malaria Foundation, which GiveWell uses. It's kind of like, this is the bar to beat. Rob is an extraordinary entrepreneur, but he was a consultant, not entirely dissimilar to me, a strategy consultant at one point. And he could have just stayed in that role, but he didn't. He launched the Against Malaria Foundation, and they've distributed, well over 200 million anti-malarial bed nets in the world at this point. But he could have just stayed as a consultant, and all of those nets just don't go out into the world. And that's thousands and thousands of lives lost just because he, as an individual, made a different decision, right? Not only that, he also, by building his team around him, he attracts in all of those other people and he gives them and directs their careers towards impact. And he's taking in funding that otherwise mightn't go to such impactful things and turning that into more impact. So I just think founders are uniquely impactful. This is Anna Christina. She launched one of our organizations called Family Empowerment Media at 21, and they've reached 15 million people in Nigeria. Just one of their pilots alone is estimated to have averted 200 deaths. So this isn't just one of their pilots. So imagine just being responsible for saving 200 women from dying in childbirth. And I mean that, like literally just like take some time at some point today or next day, seriously imagining how you'd feel about work if that was what your work was about. And if Anna Christina just hadn't signed up to the program and she hadn't run that pilot, there's 200 families, 200 kids or more growing up without a mother, and that's just their pilot. So you see, by starting an organization like this, you create this container for not only directing your own time and energy towards impact, but for pulling in other people too, perhaps who otherwise wouldn't even work in NGO jobs. And you'll be directing all of that at really important problems. So as a founder, you can have this leverage effect. It's not just your own career that you're directing at these things, it's other people, time and resources as well. And it's vital that you remember that almost nobody considers becoming a nonprofit founder, almost zero. Lots of people want to work at a high impact organization, but founders are incredibly rare. And not only that, there are now thousands, literally tens of thousands probably, well, over 10,000 anyway, of potential staff members in our wider network who dearly want to work on high impact stuff, but there simply aren't enough sophisticated evidence-based organizations to absorb them all. So they're all like struggling to get jobs. Many of you here today will be like, yeah, I really want to do something impactful, but it's actually quite hard to get into one of these organizations. So what we need is a pipeline of new, young organizations that will grow over time into the big Oxfams and the UNICEFs and the Humane Leagues of the world, and will in time become the containers to absorb all that potential money, talent, and direct it towards really excellent solutions. So it's very likely that in the future, I believe, that we will have more funding as a community, the EA sphere and wider impact-oriented sphere. It'll have more funding than it has today. So we need to start creating lots of organizations now to be the pipeline that will grow and then absorb and deploy that funding in the future. If you imagine that we just got like super rich, super quick, which nearly happened before, we just don't have enough projects that are out there in the world that will take all of that money and turn it into impact. And lastly, on this point, the fact that you're here today at this talk probably means that there's something inside you that's drawn to this kind of thing, and that is rare. But what's super, super rare is following through on that. So just to repeat myself, founders are rare and founders are valuable. So if this is something you would consider doing, really pay attention to that, I think. Okay. These are some of the organizations we've helped launch. It's over 100 founders. We think that over 50% of the organizations that we've launched are in that kind of top tier category, about they're kind of like respective leaders in their field, or field leaders in their respective field, shall we say, in the top 1% in terms of cost effectiveness and evidence base. And as Zach mentioned, some are like 5 times, 10 times, maybe even 20 times as cost effective as industry benchmarks. And notice I didn't say like 20% better. I mean 20 times more effective, more impact per dollar donated. And that's just something that we should really pay attention to. Obviously, we're skeptical about these numbers. We're taking them tentatively and we're looking at them all of the time. But the general theme is that our confidence in our model is increasing, quite well at a reasonable pace. So I think things are looking really good. Collectively, our organizations have raised like 68 million in funding or more, and they've been funded by some of the most rigorous and philanthropic organizations, rigorous, prestigious philanthropic organizations in the world, which is a super big signal for us. Large independent research organizations are looking deeply into our charities doing evaluations and coming to the conclusion that of all of the thousands of things that they could fund, that they should fund some of the organizations that we've launched. GiveWell are increasingly supporting our ideas to the tunes of tens of millions now. And we even have a partnership with them where we share our ideas, and GiveWell kind of share their best practices from their field. And we're kind of, I suppose the default is that they're very interested and willing to look at our organizations now because of the track record of the previous ones. So that's a really good signal as well. Our charities collectively have reached 75 million people and 1 billion non-human animals. I'm going to give an update on that. I just discovered the other day that we might actually be at above 3.5 billion each year. That's our best estimate at the moment, which is very, very exciting. And we're just getting started. We're very young as an organization. We've got a lot of space to grow. So if you're ambitious, I encourage you to think deeply about what you want to be ambitious about. You could spend the next few years of your life getting rich, or more likely helping other people to get rich. Or you could say, you know what? I want to be morally ambitious. I want to step up to the plate. I want to use my career for something that really matters. I want to become a charity entrepreneur. Okay, that was a bit cheesy, but you get the idea. So how does it work? Well, I'm going to, rather than trying to describe the whole program, I want to give you an example. So I think this is just a bit more, bring it to life a little bit more. So you might have already heard of LEAP, the Lead Exposure Elimination Project. If you haven't, you're about to. So about 4 years ago, our research team identified lead poisoning as a pressing and under-resourced problem in the world. It was causing 902,000 deaths, costing the world economy about $1 trillion in income loss each year. 1 in 3 children have lead poisoning on this planet right now. So for every 3 children, at least one of them has poisoning of lead. So significant that it's causing, at the very minimum, a reduction in IQ of 6 points. So it goes from 6 points all the way up to severe developmental issues to death. That's the spectrum. And 1 in 3 children on the earth have that. And it was getting a whopping $11 million in funding each year total. So we thought this was a crazy situation to be in. We've got this really awful problem. We've got this really obvious solution. We know how to get lead out of the system. You take it out of the petrol, you take it out of the paint. We've done this in most developed countries, if not all. So we need to make sure that this is happening elsewhere. So we ran an application process and selected 2 people. See them on screen, Jack and Lucia. I think they were about 24 at the time. They were very keen. They came on the program. It's a 2-month program. They liked the lead idea because we had a report on it. They joined forces. They didn't know each other before coming on the program. And they got a little bit of seed funding from us, and off they went. And they spent the first few weeks trying to figure out where to start. And then within a few months, they went to Malawi to try and lobby the government there to enforce the kind of laws that they already had in place to get lead out of paint and off the shelves. And it took them 3 months, and they convinced the Malawian Bureau of Standards to enforce regulation and do exactly that. And that work alone, just of their pilot, is projected to mean that 215,000 kids won't go to hospital from lead poisoning in Malawi in subsequent years. And that was just from their pilot, which is kind of just bonkers. They now have campaigns in, I think, over 37 countries, and they're just expanding very, very rapidly. I think the going estimate now is about $4 or $5 per DALI, which is roughly 20 times many of GiveWell's top recommendations. So we're like incredibly proud of these guys. And Jack and Lucia were, they didn't have experience with this. They weren't, experts in Malawi or lead or paint or lobbying, low income settings, anything like that. They just came on the program, they were keen, and they got to work. And they had many of the same doubts that you might have, and no idea that it would be so successful. So yeah, they've probably felt pretty similar to how you're feeling about this idea right now. Like, this is a crazy thing. I can't start a charity, but you can. So the evidence is there. And then just to touch on, there's a whole other bunch of reasons, loads of reasons to start a charity. A few things, it kind of builds up your generalist tool belt very, very quickly. It's very impressive on your CV. It's amazing career capital. your work can act as a catalyst and inspire others or pull talent and funding into a space. As I said, the lead landscape was getting 11 million in funding prior to Leap. And it's not just because of Leap's work at all, but certainly Leap helped precipitate a whole shift, pulling attention and funding to the tune of over $100 million towards lead poisoning internationally. So that's quite a big shift that isn't the direct impact of their work, but it's just kind of this wider network effect. So there's a whole bunch of other reasons to start a charity on screen, but I won't go into them all. So we've looked at why we think it's important, and let's get into the how. How does our program work? Because it sounds a bit unusual, and it is. So this is one of our cohorts, happy faces. Basically, we are 50% a research organization and 50% an incubator. So a year in advance of a program, the research team starts this huge process of looking for great new charity ideas, like the lead one. And they whittle down from literally hundreds of ideas to the very best 3 to 7 ideas, for example. And at the same time, the recruitment team in our team are finding the people to come on our program. And that's kind of why I'm here today, is to like let you know that this exists and to see if people want to join join the funnel and apply to the program, as it were. And then what we do is we bring those people onto the program and we mix them around with the different ideas and pop out these new organizations. So obviously I'll go into a little bit more detail on how that all works. But it's essentially you're coming on the program usually as an individual. You don't know the other people on the program, and you're trying to pick one of the people from the program and one of the ideas that are on the ticket and say, yeah, I want to, it could be me. And I say, like, I want to join forces with Zach and we want to start the lead idea, or we want to start the hand washing idea, or whatever happens to be, right? And then we would propose at the end of the program to do that and then seek some funding from CE's, from Charity Entrepreneurship's seed funding network. So let me tell you a little bit more about the program itself. It starts off with 5 weeks part-time. So this is where you meet up on Saturdays and you talk through the various ideas and the various reports. And, it's just kind of a softer introduction to the program rather than going full-time right from the start. And we have socials, we get to know each other, and then the program starts properly. And that's full-time for 2 months. The first 3 weeks of which you're doing it online, we're doing it remotely, we have some workshops, but for the most part, you're doing lots of projects. So the whole program is basically project-based. And the rationale for this is you do a project on monitoring and evaluation, or you might do another project on task management or something else, or budgeting. So I would do a project in the mornings with Zach, one of the mornings on one of the ideas. And then in the afternoon, I would do a different project with a different participant on a different idea. And this gives you the experience of what it's like to work with these different people. And then over the course of the weeks, you narrow your focus to, I really like working with Zach. I didn't like so much working with Bob. So you spend more time working with Zach and less time working with Bob. And eventually you kind of come to a conclusion of who you most want to work with and why. Weeks. So the projects are a whole range of different things. We do cost effectiveness analysis, weighted factor models, you do pitching, all sorts of stuff. It's great fun. For me, maybe I should just pause for a moment. For me, I had been in learning and development for actually 20 years at that point, and I found it one of the most stretching, challenging, rewarding programs. I'll always say I learned more in those 3 months than I did in the previous 3 years. It was just incredibly dense, and it was amazing how fast we could move and how much we could get through. So you do kind of 3 weeks of these online projects, and then you come together in London. Typically, we run a couple of in-person weeks. We do a lot of workshops, and you get to know the participants much better. And towards the end of week 5, you then kind of say who your preferences are and which ideas you like the most. And then we kind of bind you together into these 2-person teams, typically, not always the same. And you then spend another month working, usually in London, but it's up to you. You can go home at that point if you like and work remotely. And you spend that second month kind of doing up a proposal for funding. You put that in front of our seed funding network, and they nearly always get funded. It's just a matter of degree. And then you get the funding, and the following week you launch your charity and off you go. And it's a wild ride. It's great. yeah, so I'm guessing there'll be a bunch of questions on that in a bit. Oh, and then we, just to be clear, we don't then just go, see ya, and like cast you out into the abyss. No, we have this, like the most common feedback we get is, I had no idea how supportive and how great the community would be after the program. Wow, this is so valuable. So like the support continues at that point. We just want to see you succeed. So yeah. A couple of details while you're on the program. We provide you with a stipend, so we cover your cost of living. It's pretty minimal, but like it'll get you there. We provide the training. Obviously, it's all free. We help you find a co-founder within the cohort. We have at least 5 ideas on each cohort for you to choose between. We publish those in advance. I can talk to you about a little bit about those if you like. And then we provide both mentoring and ongoing mentoring throughout. And we set you up with fiscal sponsorship. So this basically means that you don't have to set up a legal entity. You just exist underneath a pre-existing legal entity. So it just means that you can hit the ground running and you don't have to go through that kind of very lengthy jurisdictional admin process of getting your charity founded. Okay. And we provide the funding and obviously the post-program support, as mentioned. We have a book. Get in touch if you'd like a copy. Yeah, you can get it on Amazon as well. And yeah, that's what it's called. It's pretty on the nose. Probably give you a good idea. So who's a good fit for this? Just going to spend a couple of minutes introducing the founders and giving you a sense of like the more human element of all of this, and then we'll pause there for Q&A. Okay, so kind of 6 more minutes of me talking. So here are some of our founders. You see that from all over the place. This is some of the people from our wider community. So we have like over 100 founders now. And yeah, some of, I would call many of them amongst my friends at this point, like my good friends. So it's a great experience. But just to give you a sense of the kind of range of people that we have and where they're coming from. On the left, you see Andres. Andres was a former partner at a real estate firm, and he came on the program. He was actually on the same program that I went on. And like many of us, when he first heard that charity entrepreneurship were concerning themselves with shrimp welfare, kind of rolled his eyes and went, what? Surely there are bigger problems in the world to worry about than shrimp. You roll forward a year, he had come around to the idea, launched a shrimp welfare charity, and now has an enormous tattoo of a shrimp on his arm. So, your mind can be changed over time by paying attention to some of these ideas and opportunities. And I think that's really cool. But look, he had worked for many years in a big real estate firm. So that's one profile of person. On the right, you see Anna Christina. She was a university dropout, which makes her sound like, she dropped out of university because she wasn't enjoying it or something. No, she dropped out in order to do something really cool. And now she's working at Family Empowerment Media, as I mentioned earlier. And yeah, they're just like astonishingly, they're moving very, very fast. On your left here is Kayur. Kayur was an emergency doctor, and now he's working on fighting mother-to-child transmission of syphilis and HIV in the Philippines. So he's moved from kind of directly working with a small number of patients, as you do as a doctor, to working more at a systemic level, trying to change policy and change norms in the Philippines. Varsha worked at the World Bank and now provides vaccines reminders, so SMS reminders, so that mothers and caregivers vaccinate their children in India. So she's again working at this like much larger scale level, which is very exciting. But having said all of that, there's no real profile of the people that we find. That, like, it's so diverse. There's almost no characteristics that are consistent to everybody in their backgrounds, but there are a bunch of characteristics that are kind of consistent in their personality, shall we say, or how they show up. And these are kind of like the distillation of that. So the types of people that we feel do very well on our program are ambitiously altruistic. So they're not trying to do some amount of good. They're very, very committed or very, very excited, shall we say, about doing as much good as possible. And that might sound like a bit obvious, but actually when you look at people's behavior, many people, once they start doing something that's pretty impactful, they're kind of like, yeah, that's amazing. I feel great. That's good. And it is, and that's wonderful. But we look for something that's a little bit like, oh, there's an unusual trait, which is like almost no amount of impact will kind of be enough, because there's just so much suffering in the world. There's so many problems. So always looking for more, kind of insatiable might be a word there. The second one is just somebody who's like very results focused, who has a track record of accomplishing things. And this can be, like you're just out of university. Great. Like, what did you do in university? What are some of the things that you've accomplished throughout that? It doesn't mean that you need to have like a huge career behind you. I think the average age of our participants has been pretty low. Like, we've had plenty of 21-year-olds. We had a 19-year-old on the program. We've had a 65-year-old on the program. Not me, before you jump there. No need. But yeah, another factor that we're looking for is somebody who's kind of capable of fitting in with a startup culture. And what that means is you're willing to just kind of do everything pretty well, but not do anything brilliantly, because you just don't have time, or because it's just not the best trade-off. So this is a very important trait that we're looking for. People who are willing to 80-20 things, people who are very quick to go, okay, look, there's a whole range of things we need to do this week, but which are the most valuable? Which should we start with? And then, yeah, sure, if we have time left over, we'll do less valuable stuff. But let's start off with the most valuable things and moving quickly. And then we have this kind of scientific mindset with good epistemics, which sits not in contradiction to the other ones, but it sits in tension. Like, if you're going to be very, very ambitious and you want to move very fast, to also do that with a kind of scientific mindset, which is typically more rigorous, it's slower, it's more, you're more precise. They can tend to be in tension. And that's why it's quite hard for us to find the people that really, really fit well. It's that like kind of like wanting to do things fast and break things, move, MVP things, but at the same time checking, hey, hang on, does this really follow the rigor that we need it to make sure that we're actually having the impact that we are? And then lastly, are you highly collaborative? Do you work well with others? And this splits into two. Some of our founders work really, really well with other people, and that's why we select them. And some people don't work so well with other people, and they're just kind of a born solo founder force of nature that, like, yeah, they might ruffle a few feathers along the way, but they just get results. So, but mostly we look for the collaborative side of that coin, because it just, seems to be a higher hit rate. Okay, the ways to explore this, I'll be sharing a document. Sorry, I should have put this in earlier. I'll share a document now, actually. So where's the chat function? I have too many. Okay, I might share it with Zach afterwards and we'll send it out to you. Oh no, here, sorry, I have it here. Sorry about this, folks. Here's a link to a document with what we call applicant resources. And in there are a bunch of links to different things, and including some jobs and opportunities in our wider community, and some resources for if you want to apply to the program. But the main link in there for this section of the talk is just that we have this quiz. So you answer a bunch of questions and it kind of does a personality profile on you a little bit, and then tells you how well suited you are for the program and what you might want to pay attention to. Okay, so these are some of the ideas that are on the upcoming program. If you apply now, you won't be applied to doing these ideas, because these are the ones on the very next program. But I'll just leave them on the screen for a moment so you can kind of get a sense of the range of ideas. But for the next cohort to which you could be applying, which would be in September 2026, we're focused on disability and well-being focused global health ideas, interventions that primarily are about improving people's lives rather than necessarily saving lives, and family planning. They're the two major ones. And then some of the ideas that we haven't quite concluded yet, but we're still looking into, that are quite likely to be part of that program, would be changing legislation to allow more actors and pharmacies, for example, to sell a broader range of family planning products, expanding sugar sweetened beverages taxes on sweet beverages to new countries, because that's proving very, very effective, and we just want to speed that up. And then screening for sickle cell and other inherited blood disorders that we can avert severe fatigue and shortness of breath and stuff. So they're quite specific. We'll publish more on those as we get closer to the time. Applications will be open on January 12th and close on February 15th. So there's kind of a month there where you can apply. And there's a special edition of the program on philanthropic ecosystem organization changes. I don't know, it's hard to explain. But check out the website and you can read up more on that later. So yeah, last thing I just want to mention, and then we'll do Q&A, are I used to give this, or I used to give talks a little bit similar to this live at a lot of EA conferences in person. And then I would sit and chat with people afterwards. And I collected the most common concerns or reasons people would be like, okay, that sounds great, but I'm not going to apply. Well, why? And I collected all of these. I kind of did quite, kind of nerdy. I kind of kept kind of a tracker on how many times they were coming up, what were the themes, all that kind of stuff, did some analysis. And my kind of soft conclusion, it's not like, I don't know, it's not like social science, good quality researcher or anything, but just my soft conclusion is that most of these things, when you investigate them, fundamentally cash out in, I'm just not comfortable. I don't think it's for me, and I'd be a bit scared to do it, or it's a bit risky, or I'm too young, it's too far away, like all these different things. And I think that's all entirely legitimate. Like I felt very much outside of my comfort zone on the program. So just to acknowledge that that's how most people feel, and that most people feel that they won't get onto the program. And I did another piece, a little piece of research a few years ago where I tried to figure out of the people that made it onto the program, what chances did they give themselves of getting onto the program? And nearly everybody said less than 10%. And that's of the people who made it onto the program. So if you're feeling that way, that's not a very good indicator that you're not going to get on the program. It's just very hard for you to know whether or not you'd be a good fit. But it's reasonably easy for us to know because that's why we have a big sophisticated vetting system. That's what that's for. So if you would like to do this, pay attention to that. Charities don't get founded every year simply because we can't find enough founders. We have the funding, we have the ideas, we have the program, but we can't find the people to run them. So yeah. Let's finish up there and we'll do Q&A for a while, and then I'll have one final little piece at the end, and I'll just bring you through a couple of more slides. So yeah, Zachary, do you want to jump in with questions, or how do you want to do this?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Steve. I think that was really fascinating and highly informative. And judging by how many questions we've got in via Swapcard, I think this really was speaking to what people are very interested in, and potentially we've gotten a lot of people interested in trying to maybe assess themselves if they can be founders. But also, maybe before I get to the questions which are on Swapcard, and also for others that may be wanting to contribute those questions, you can just upvote if there are any questions there that I think you also want to be asked, please just maybe upvote so that we can try and save time because we have more questions than we can handle. But also, Steve, I was curious because I think a lot of what you're doing at AIM has to do, as you said, 50% research and 50% incubation. And within that overlap, I think there is going to be some level of uncertainty that you have to either adjust for or that you have to overcome. So I'm maybe just trying to understand better what is the greatest uncertainty that you have to overcome or adjust for when selecting founders?
Greatest uncertainty in our selection of founders specifically, like as in, well, I mean, we always feel like we need more information to make that decision. Like every candidate, we're like, oh, I wish we knew more about this thing or knew more about that thing. But I'm not sure I fully understand the question, Zach.
Yeah, no, basically I was just trying to, get your mind in terms of how you adjust your decision-making process in a world of, so much information which you possibly cannot know at any given point. So that's
Yeah.
basically the question I was
Our
trying to
model, our vetting model is predictive. We have the same multiple choice questions in the first round. We've refined them over the last few years, but we've linked the patterns of answers in the first round to the people who got through the program, to the people who launched the most successful charities as best we can. And we've noticed what those patterns are. So we can actually compare a new person who's applying now today to the patterns that we see are linked to people having eventual success. So it's like quite high predictive value to that, but that's just the first round. And then what we do is each subsequent round, as we get to know the candidates better, we identify questions, concerns, hypotheses that we're like, I wonder about this thing, about this particular person. And as you move through the process, we actually adapt the process, particularly the last round. The final interview is effectively all of the things that have come up earlier in that process for that person. We create specific questions to try and go into those hypotheses a little bit more. So we might think, oh, this person seems super, super high in this characteristic. Let's test that, or let's double check that. So it's malleable, and I think that's pretty cool. Like honestly, I think but it makes a lot of work. It makes it a lot.
Yeah, that's very good to know. Thank you. And among the many questions we've got of Swapcard, maybe I'll also just read this one. It says, "What are the best ways for current bachelor's or master's students to prepare and upskill if they want to become high impact founders?"
So I think there's two questions there. One is how you become a founder, and two is how do you upskill in order to apply to our program and get on it? And they're not the same thing, because one thing we have to be very cognizant of is the vast majority of highly effective charities that have been launched in the world were not launched through our program. So we do not have a monopoly on all of the great founders in the world. We just have our own peculiar, particular, we think particularly effective way of doing it, but it's not a monopoly. So I think if you move the question to be like, how do I become a founder? It's like go do independent projects, go work for great founders, go spend time, surround yourself with these people and these ideas as much as you possibly can. Try and get a job where you're at the coalface. Try and get more responsibility at your job. So get practice in. And then if you move the question more towards how do I get into CE's program, then ironically, it's kind of similar, but it's not entirely the same. It's like, can you demonstrate that kind of agenticism, we'll call it that, kind of high agency? Like, so can you do some projects on your own or in your own university or in your own community, or, can you actually make something happen out of nothing, something that wouldn't have happened otherwise? Short version is, can you step up to the plate? And that will demonstrate to us, oh, okay, this person has that special quality that we look for. And it's rare that people have the opportunity to do that, but if you do have the opportunity to do that and you take it, that's a super strong signal for getting on our program. The other thing is try and like learn about the charities that we've already launched. Try and get in and like read their blog posts, read about the people, and try and go and work for one of them. Like that applies to either of those two routes that I was talking about. Like getting a job or an internship at one of our charities is a really, really good way to accelerate your progress.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. And now to the point that you have, I think, mentioned a couple of times, and just now in response to this question, it seems there's a couple of things. Number one, scale. And you have mentioned on one of the slides that solutions do exist. The problem, however, is not enough people to actually launch these kind of organization that would lead to impact. So maybe just trying to understand from you, what would you say is the potential of aims on expansion? Because I think there's a world where if you're able to do this much good with just launching 50 organizations, you could do even more with launching maybe 100 or 150 or 200.
Yeah,
So maybe
yeah.
just speak on that. Yes.
Well, when I did the program, I had hair. Now I don't have hair, so it's quite tiring. No, we are trying to scale. We've been trying to scale in a few different ways over the last number of years. We've had different hypotheses, and some of them have worked really, really well. So one way to scale is you scale the thing that you're doing. Another way to scale is you pivot and do ancillary things, or you pick off other theories of change. So we launched a for-profit incubator, which is the first iteration of that went very well last year. And the idea there is that we launch a bunch of for-profit businesses, and then those businesses donate 50% of their initial profits to high impact charities. So could that work? And then we went off and, well, would anybody sign up to that? Would anybody actually commit to giving away 50% of their future profits? The answer is yes. We didn't know that before. So that's been a successful test, as it were. We tested a grant makers program where rather than doing more we will always do more of the incubation program, but what if we trained grant makers to be more impact oriented? Can that work? Can you move people from being less impact oriented to being more impact oriented, for example? Or can you help them find better opportunities? And that seems to be working. So that's another scaling direction, and so on. We had a researchers training program and other things as well. Um, and then there's the how do we scale the actual incubation program itself? And for many years, we were cognizant of scaling it too quickly because while we knew that we could probably launch more organizations, the second stage funding ecosystem just wasn't there. GiveWell was very comfortable funding anything over 1 million if it was highly impactful. And our seed funders were comfortable funding something that was, let's say under a couple of $100,000. But there was nobody who was funding that middle stage to get you from A to B or A to C. There was nobody doing B. And 3 or 4 years ago, Joey, our co-founder, set himself a project of kind of like strengthening that middle stage so that we could, because there's no point in launching more charities if they're just going to fall at the second hurdle. And now we have, I think, we're far more confident in the second stage. So we created a bunch of funding circles and other things. So it's not always just like you can't just scale the thing you're doing. You have to make sure that the ecosystem into which the thing that you're doing is also scaling. And so we've been growing that. So we think now that there's more absorbency in the world to create more of these organizations ourselves, and we're doing that. And we're running the program 3 times now in 2026, as opposed to, we used to run it once a year. Now we're running it twice a year, and then next year we're going to run it 3 times. So I'm going to be very, very bold. I'm going to be, I don't know how more, I can't get more bold, but I'll be even more bold in a year's time. And we're looking for systems and ways of scaling that up. We've just got a new CEO, so we're very excited about that. And a big portion of our discussions in early 2026 are going to be like, okay, so what's our scaling plan going to be? So yeah, TBD.
Okay. That's good news to look forward to. Picking a question from Swapcard, and so this question says, given M's record, it seems you have developed an interview process that is highly successful in predicting that an applicant would fit the program. How do you think your process differs from other recruitment processes?
I don't know. We'd have to define the other recruitment processes to draw the differential. I'm not on the recruitment team, but all I can say is I think Ben and Emma and Crystal are doing a great job over there, and it seems very sophisticated to me, and it's a bit of a black box to me at this point. I'm just like that. Wow, that's really complicated, and that seems great, but I don't really know what you guys are doing at this point. I think we've invested an awful lot in it, and it is probably the single most sophisticated part of our organization. And I think that tracks because the greatest predictor of the impact of these charities seems to be the fit and talent of the founders that we managed to find. So I think we've put an appropriate amount of investment there. But as for how it's different, I don't know. I think it's probably because we've been able to do it year on year, and then we're constantly tweaking and recalibrating and getting it more accurate. But beyond that, I don't know if I can say anything particularly specific or useful. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Oh,
So,
you know what I will say on that is like I mentioned it during the talk, but like it is just really, really hard for you to know if you'd be a good fit for this because you've never done this, probably, right? And if you've never done something, it's just really, really hard for you to know. But we have done it a bunch of times, and we've done it with a bunch of different people, right? So, if you doubt yourself, or even if you're confident that you're not a good fit, you shouldn't be confident that you're not a good fit. You probably don't know. And I don't mean that in like some kind of pejorative sense. I mean, it's just how could you know? You haven't done it before. And we have done it. And like I went through the program, like a lot of us, Ben went through the program. He started a charity as well. We have been there. We have done this. And, I don't want to say we know, but like we have a better sense than most. Let's put it that way.
yeah, I thank you for that. So, I'm also now curious, especially for the program ideas that come out of your research, which seems to be very, very extensive. I'm curious in terms of how you do the matching. And in this particular case, I'm very, very curious with regards to geography, because some, problems or ideas for programs are very specific to locations. So when you're doing the matching program, do you also look at where the founders are located?
Yeah. So even when we're doing our recruitment, as soon as we have a pretty good handle on what the ideas are going to be, we find out, well, what kinds of places are they likely to start in, and can we tilt our outreach, or like trying to find applicants, and can we tilt our recruitment to people from those places? So obviously, if we're trying to start something in Pakistan and we get an applicant and they speak the language, we're like, oh, this person gets a huge bump, right, in their application process. That being said, it is very important, like the differences between the best place to start a charity, and like the third best place to start a charity seems pretty enormous. And we don't necessarily know what that is before the program. Like, you come on the program and go, oh, okay, this kangaroo care idea looks really good. It's not for kangaroos, by the way, it's just the name of an intervention. This looks really good, but it could be in Nigeria, it could be in Pakistan, we don't know. It would be up to the founders to figure that out. And then the founders come on the program, or the participants come on the program, and they kick it around. And during the program, they do a geographic assessment and they kind of explore it in more depth. And they might come to the conclusion that, like, hey, given that one of us has the language, but the other one doesn't, if we do start this in Pakistan, that means that, like, it'll be a bit slower than if we go to Nigeria, where we both speak English, and that's kind of like a usable language there, So actually, in our case, given that we're the most likely people on this cohort to found this, we would plumb for Nigeria, and then we run out the cost effectiveness analysis, and we go, okay, it's slightly less attractive. I'm making all this up now. It's slightly less attractive than Pakistan, but given that both of us will be able to speak the language, net, it would make more sense to start this in Nigeria. There's the subtlety and the nuance of all of those little things that happen. That's what the program is for. It's to give you the time and space to model this out, or to think this through, and to run out some of these different avenues and see where they go to. And the organizations become an extension of the talents and abilities and all these things of the particular founders. So they're not like, here's the charity, you start it this way. No, it's, here's an idea, you take it. Which direction would you take it in? And I think that's important to say.
Perfect. Thank you. I think we are going to be able to squeeze maybe just one or two questions, because I also recognize that you had some, I think, additional pointers to show before we wrap the program. So maybe I'll take just one more question.
Right.
And just also mention here that we're going to have office hours with Steve. You can join through Gather Round just immediately after this. So for those with more questions, burning questions, or just want to interact further, please do follow us to the office hours. But before that, there's a question on, I think, specifically the matching or the selection of the program. So the question says, how do founders select the ideas? Does that happen during the early weeks in the program?
Yeah. So we don't determine or dictate who goes with who and who goes which idea. We vet great people, we find great people, put them on the program, and then we kind of leave it over to them. We create all sorts of structure and give loads of process so that they can explore all of the options and figure out their own preferences. And preferences is our ideal, or like what we're aiming for is the maximal impact from a cohort. So we try and say, okay, so we got these 14 people on this cohort. So the potential here is for 7 charities. Okay, so that's what we're trying to get to, but we're looking for the 7 most impactful charities. And we might go, maybe this time we'll start 5 of those 7, and we'll port a couple onto the next program because fit isn't quite right or something. But impact is our highest goal, but the way in which we serve that goal is by giving you space to figure out what your preferences are. And if your preferences bake in, well, I work really, really well with Zach, but I don't work so well with Bob. And I really, really like this idea, but I don't have any background in it. So I'm going to go with the idea that I like slightly less, but I have way more background in. Okay, yeah, no, that would be my preference, actually. Or you might say, I don't have a background in this. Screw it, I'll get a background in it, I'll develop it, right? And that becomes your preference. If that's how you're built, then we just want to kind of support you in that preference and help you move forward. So it's hard to say what we do, other than like we provide the space and the structures to explore all of those different avenues. And then we rely on, I don't rely, maybe not the right word, but we lean on your preferences as being so rich in the nuances of that decision. So you as an individual have by the end of the program, can have much more understanding of the differences between your avenues than I can hold in my head for 14 people. I can't do it by 14. So I coach you and I listen to you and I help you explore which of those avenues are the most impactful. And then we're aware of what other people in the cohort are doing. So if you do this, then that kind of takes that idea, and then these other people won't be able to do the idea. And sometimes there's a little bit of competition for the ideas. Sure, that's natural, but we work it out and it always seems to go fine. So yeah, it's like a reality dating show, mixed with weighted factor models. It's bizarre, but it's great fun and people love it, and it seems to work.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Steve. And I think with 2 minutes left,
Yeah.
perhaps that should be considered as our last question during our Q&A. And as you mentioned, Steve, you had, I think, one or two things left to
Yeah,
say.
that's what I
So
want to say. A couple of things. Can we put the
that
slides back up? Is that possible, Richard? Yeah, great, fantastic, thank you. So I just want to say, give two quick examples, and then I'll finish up. So this is one of our oldest charities. It's called Fortify Health, and what they did was they looked at anemia and child development in India, and so many kids are, millions and millions of kids are iron deficient and folic acid deficient. Said, how do you get iron and folic acid into the mouths of millions and millions of ultra poor kids in these places? And they hit on the idea of putting the fortification into flour in these major mills where all of the flour is milled. And they just went to a bunch of those mills and said, "Hey, can we put this in? It's, we'll pay for it." And then it gets distributed, because it's in the flour, to the towns, and from the towns to the shops, and from the shops to the kids. And it's just like you're piggybacking on this existing infrastructure, and they're averting 235 lifetimes of disability every month. So every month, 235 fewer children become disabled to the point where they're not going to be disabled for the rest of their lives because of this work. So just I think it's important that you kind of try and grasp what it would feel like to be the founder, to be Nikita, who at 21 launched this thing. It must feel amazing, right? So that's the first one. And then that's our oldest charity, and this is one of our youngest ones. And this is Ansh, and they do what I call kangaroo care. Mentioned it earlier. And so simply holding a baby against a mother's chest if they're low birth weight, because they get cold, and then they unfortunately can perish. And just doing this activity, holding the baby close to them for 8 hours a day for the first number of days, is exceptionally well proven to increase or avert deaths. And in their first 11 months, they built 2 clinics in India and averted maybe 150, shall we say, premature deaths, and they're expanding to 15 hospitals. So you're talking about, it's like 700 lives in year 2. And that's one of our youngest charities. And I just really want you to just play in your mind with what your life would be like if you were running something like this. How would that feel to you? So last thing I want to say is, if I find my notes, is the real question here is, do you want to step up to the plate? Is there something inside you that really wants to be ambitious about impact? Something inside you that wants to, build something bigger than yourself and become a charity entrepreneur? So if so, have a look at our website, apply to our program, and I'll see you in Gather.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Steve, for this wonderful session, and also wish to thank our members in the audience and for participating. I think this is all the time that we had for this session. Really, really great session. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of the sessions. Bye.
Bye.